that we have been going through. At the start of the lockdown, we started these series of conversations as a means to get useful information out into the market during this time, and to really inform, equip, and inspire all of you to go through and get through this process as best as you can. We've hosted a number of conversations under the three themes that I've mentioned. Inform is really around making information available around the various relief schemes out there, and guiding you to speaking to the right people, and being able to get your applications in through the various relief funds. Inspire was where we had conversations with many entrepreneurs and getting them to share some of the challenges that they've experienced during this time, but also just to give you some hope that as individuals we are resilient, and ultimately we do learn from each other, and ultimately we will come out of this period stronger. The third element, equip, is where we've been having a couple of masterclasses, and the idea here is really to equip you in getting back to some sort of normalcy. When this situation does subside, and we get back to life as normal as we know it. And I suppose normal is now such a relative concept, because I think we all realize when we get back to what we deem as normal, normal is not going to be normal anymore. It's going to be a different environment out there. And in light of that, we've been having discussions around strategy and how to think about how you are to move forward as an organization, and really find ways for us to prepare for the next phase, whether it be from a business perspective, whether it be from a personal perspective, how we manage our teams when we get back into the office environment, and starting to get back into working on our various projects. How do you manage people? And I think in line with that today, the discussion that we're going to have with someone who is really passionate around the topic of health and safety is our guest, Kosi Kunene, who I'll formally introduce just now. And Kosi is someone who is absolutely passionate around health and safety, and what this means for us as we get back to the new normal. So Kosi actually wrote a very interesting article for those of you who may have come across it. It was an article that appeared on MoneyWeb on towards the end of March, if I'm not mistaken, Kosi. And the title of the article was "Health and Safety is in the Hand of Amateurs, and South Africa needs a coordinated effort to fight the COVID-19 epidemic." And this was on the 28th of March that Kosi had released this article. And I think for those of you who have not seen it, my team who are managing the chat will certainly make a link to that article available. I think it's a really well thought through and almost a way in which we need to start preparing ourselves for this new normal as we get back into the work environment and the various projects that we are involved in. It's important to start to reflect on how we are able to adapt to this new environment. So I'd like to encourage all of you, please do use the chat function at the bottom of the screen. We also want to keep the session as interactive as possible with Kosi. So please do ask those questions that you've been grappling with. If you are someone who is back in the work environment, or you are preparing to get back into the work environment, please do so. And please do remember to follow us on our social media pages. www.ettp.co.za is our website. Please make sure you join and sign up to our newsletter. Also, please do have a look at our YouTube site and subscribe and become a follower. I think you'll find that over the past couple of weeks, there's a lot of relevant information to inform, equip, and inspire you. So please do have a look at that. And yes, please do follow us on our social media handles at E to the Point on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, as well as on the various other social media channels that we were on. Instagram as well. Sorry, that's the one that failed me. So I'd like to take this opportunity now to formally welcome Kosi Kunene. So Kosi is the CEO and founder of Mpelentele, if I got it correctly, Kosi Consulting.
Yes.
As I said, she's an expert in the space of health and safety, and someone who is exceptionally passionate about it. So Kosi, on behalf of myself and my team, welcome to Entrepreneurship to the Point. And
Yes.
we're really looking forward to having this conversation with you.
And thank you so much for having me around, and thank you to the audience as well. And thank you so much for this opportunity. I really don't take it for granted. As a small and medium-sized company myself, every opportunity there is intended to uplift the work that we do. We really appreciate. What I'm going to start with is actually to give the audience the historic perspective when it comes to issues of health and safety. I think historically, health and safety has always been regarded as a compliance requirement, as opposed to the investment that needs to be made. I think everybody who has managed a business understands that there is no business that you can manage without having an engaged employee community that is willing and able to be productive and support you to run your business effectively. So without a healthy employee, there is no productive business. And in so saying, we are trying to say that we need productive employees to participate in reconstructing the economy, as we all understand that currently we all have got the responsibility to reconstruct the economy. And for us to understand that the government, I think nationally and internationally, it is something that has been agreed upon that there is no business that can be, or economy that can be functional without the small and medium-sized companies. So the small and medium-sized companies are actually the backbone of the economy. So if we intend to reconstruct this economy, we need it to uplift. In every way, we need to support the small and medium-sized companies. Secondly, what I would like to emphasize is the fact that we have got no going back. It's for the first time that in history where there's no going back to where we were. That term is actually becoming very irrelevant. We need to start working towards building a new workplace. We need to think about how should our future workplaces look like for us to be productive and to reconstruct our economy. And in reconstructing those workplaces or economy, we need new workplaces, which, by the way, it is for us to work slowly towards imagine a new vision of the future workplaces, how they should function. So the investment in human capital and ensuring that we create an enabling environment for a healthier and safety culture to emerge in the new workplaces, it rests upon us, not only the management, but the employees themselves. They need to be able to cooperate and work in collaboration with the leadership to make sure that we create the workplaces that we can all be proud of. So as we go back to the workplace, we are going to start with the immediate steps that we need to take. What should we take immediately before we come to the medium and long-term plans that we need to put in place, which is implementing the health and safety system, which is in line with the ISO 45001. The immediate steps is to make sure that we reassure our employees that the workplaces that they are going to are actually healthier and safer. And that is important in ensuring psychologically, because when we look at the definition of what health is, it is the positive affirmation of the psychological function, the mental function, the physical function, and even the social function. You are not only healthy when you are physically out of risk, but you are healthy when psychologically you are relaxed. That's when you become more productive in the workplace. So psychologically, if we can try and create platforms for our employees to be able to talk and tell us what their fears are, what is it that they are fearful of, and be able to reassure our employees that whatever fears that they have, they've been taken care of. And even as leadership, we need leaders that will emerge and stand up showing us that our public is now ready for transparent and leadership that can be trusted. So if we don't come forward and be honest with our employees in terms of what our situation is, and we know that currently there are people that are going to lose employment. It's clear, it's known. Some people are getting letters, but we need to do it in a sensitive way that says to employees, look, we cannot keep all of you. However, we understand how stressful it is for any employee to lose employment. So that needs to be done appropriately. Even the law does emphasize the fact that it's very important that you actually counsel the employees. They need to be counseled. So psychologically, they need to be managed properly. That is
Yes.
one step. Secondly, is to actually track the cases. Make sure that you screen the people and you also track them so that you can be sure, guaranteed that wherever the workplace that you have created is actually safer and healthier for employees. You are not
Yes.
only accountable to the employees, but you are also accountable to all the stakeholders that does business with you. In terms of the acts that guys, which is the Health and Safety Act, it's not only the employees that an employer is accountable to. You are also accountable to the communities that are around you. You are also accountable to everybody that does business with you. Because should they contract a disease while they're in your place of work, you are actually liable.
Yes.
I
So
don't know.
Kofi,
Do you want to ask something?
yeah, sorry to interject.
Hello?
I think in painting
Okay.
that introduction, certainly health and safety as we know it, as we move forward, shouldn't just be seen as a compliance requirement. I think there's so much more
Yes.
that built in around health and safety. And I think when one tries to unpack the topic, as you've mentioned now, it doesn't only look at it through a compliance lens of what needs to be done to make sure that you are compliant, but it actually affects the way that you need to be conducting your business. And it certainly has a broader
Yes.
stakeholder view that one needs to be mindful of. It's not just saying, yes, I need to comply to health and safety, but what is the bigger implication? How does that affect the way in which we communicate, with our stakeholders? And how do we get that message across to
Yes.
them? So I think that's very
Yes.
important in terms of viewing health and safety more as a management system, which is what you talk about.
Yes.
And I think we know for a management system to be implemented, it does take time to be able to implement it. And I think
Yes.
in many cases, and I just wanted to read a quote from your article again, where you said, I quote, sanitizing and washing all have their place. But if it is not part of a coherent health and safety system, these
Yes.
actions are meaningless,
Yes.
unquote. So, so yeah, maybe you just want to expand on that a little bit.
Okay. And when you look at the Occupational Health and Safety Act, when the health and safety system is actually, we are guided by a number of acts. And it's interesting because they are all working together. It's just us, when we think about health and safety, we don't think it as in a coordinated mechanism, but all the acts that guide the relationship between an employer and employee, they are actually working together. If you look at the Occupational Health and Safety Act, one of the requirements in terms of the Occupational Health and Safety Act is for us to be able to make sure that we conduct the pre-employment medicals. For anybody that gets employed, you need to be able to actually conduct the pre-employment medicals, because the understanding is that every job or every position carries is inherently, it actually exposes that employee to a certain degree of risk. And it's very interesting because the leadership, which is the executives, they normally think that they're not at risk. They actually are at risk. The level of stress that they have to deal with exposes them to a lot of risk. I've seen executives passing away in the place of work. So the law says you need to undertake the risk assessment to try and identify all the risks that are inherent with the work that you do. Meaning that each and every employee is actually exposed to a certain degree of risk. So when you employ somebody, you need to do the pre-employment medicals, which is the medicals that gives you the information that you get there, gives you the baseline assessment of the status of health for that particular person that you are employing at that time. And then periodically you have to do the periodic medicals to keep that employee healthy throughout the period while he or she is employed in your organization. And at the end, when this employee exits the system, you also need to do the exit medical exam, so that you keep the records that say for the duration of the period while you were employed by this company, we have managed to keep you healthy. Because if you don't do that and that employee acquire any illness along the way, what the government does, it makes everybody to pay. Everybody that has employed that employee is going to pay towards, even if it's not you. So if you don't have that system in place to make sure that you keep your employees healthy throughout the period, you are actually doing a great disfavor to the company itself, because along the way, you can be held liable. So health and safety is implemented in terms of the ISO 45001, which is the international standard. It has got different elements starting from the culture of the organization. The culture itself, which is the tone at the top, needs to tell everybody that does business with you that health and safety is a priority for this company. So if you are not intending to take health and safety as seriously as we take it, we are even prepared not to do business with you. Because it doesn't have to have partners that are not taking health and safety serious, because as your employees goes to do work in those partners, they are going to be exposed to the risk of health.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to welcome everyone that's joining us this afternoon. For those of you who have joined the conversation slightly late, we're speaking to Kosi Kunene, who is a health and safety expert, and she is taking us through the phases that one needs to go through, and how we should be prepared as we are re-entering the workplace, as we are getting back to our daily jobs and getting out there into the broader environment. Kosi, we just took a poll now as well, and I just saw the results that it seems that 40% of our guests this afternoon joining the call are back at work, and I would imagine that a lot of them are trying to settle back into the working environment and dealing with the various checks that are in place, and the precautionary measures that one needs to go through, the sanitizing, the wearing of masks, and making sure we are observing social distancing. So there's still a large proportion of people, I guess, who are still working remotely and are still trying to prepare themselves as they get back into the working environment. I just want to acknowledge some of our regulars this afternoon. So welcome to Andrew, we know Andrew well, to Funeka, to Miriam, Rafilwe, who's also a regular, Simpiwe, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. And please, guys, please do remember to follow us on Entrepreneurship to the Point. It's www.ettp.co.za. Please do sign up to our newsletter, and also please do subscribe to our YouTube site. A copy of this conversation will also be made available on YouTube at the end. So please do follow us on all the social media channels. So Kosi, when we talk about this system, it sounds very organized. And I think a lot of the reaction that we are seeing currently is more reactive, as opposed to taking a proactive view. And here again, when you implement a system, you almost need to have a long-term view of how that system is going to be implemented. What are the cost benefits, etc. So it does become quite an exercise that one needs to go through and one needs to plan for. I guess given the current situation and the reactive nature of what we're trying to do through the various precautionary measures, in your view, is this sustainable for many people going back into the workplace now?
No, it's actually not sustainable. When you look at how health is being addressed, there are three lines of defense in like the corrective measures that a person needs to take into consideration when a risk of health and safety has been identified. Firstly is engineering measures. Let me just make an example and say, we have observed that one of the risks in your operations is dust or noise. The first thing that you need to take into consideration, should you consider engineering measures to respond to that risk that you are seeing? If you think that no, it doesn't, maybe you can, but maybe it's going to be too expensive at that point in time, then you have to look at the administrative measures. What administrative measures should you put in place? Things like your policies, your procedures, your processes that needs to be in place for you to mitigate that risk. So what you need to do, that's the second level of Somebody is sending me messages, so I'm trying to be sick. So
Don't worry
one of
about
the
the messages.
one of the things that we need to look at, I was trying to say, you consider the engineering measures to say, maybe to correct this risk, I'll need to reconstruct maybe the setup of how I do the work, or
Yes.
I need the administrative measures, meaning that I need policies, I need processes to be able to guide people in terms of how to do this work with minimal risk. The third level, which everybody knows about, is the PPE. Health and safety, PPE is the last thing that you consider when you address the risk of health and safety. But it looks like everybody thinks that it is the only risk, intervention that you need. No, it's not. There are so many levels that you have to consider depending on the level of risk. Risk is also classified. You understand? You look at the impact to say, this risk, should I opt for this intervention? Will I be able to, to achieve the best results out of it? So health and safety is deeper than just PPE and mask and all those things. It's deeper. It's something that for you to sustain health and safety. That is why when you look at it, I've always said to people, if you really want to deal with issues of health and safety, my suggestion will be, from the construction of the site, you need to be able to think about health and safety. Get an advisor right from there while you are designing your workplace, so that you can prevent every possibility of exposing employees or whoever your stakeholders are to the risk of health and safety. Because for me, yes, that can be regarded as maybe um, a costly. However, when you look at it, I think it's very helpful that you become a little bit proactive. You prevent it from the source. That's what we normally say. So that, as right now,
Yeah.
by the way, health and safety is not only about the employees, it's about the environment, it's about the building, it's about everything. Right now, we're talking about the energy renewal. How nice will it be if you look at it from the source while you are constructing the business, to make sure that all these exposures are prevented right from there? I think it will be more cheaper to do that rather than trying to correct something after the fact. But you'll find that a lot of businesses, they only think about issues of health and safety. Ventilation, air quality in the workplace, that's all part of health and safety. But people only think about it after the fact. You have to think about it from construction of the building, to say, as I'm constructing this building, thinking about the people that will be using this building, will these people be able to be social distance and be able to breathe properly in the space that I'm going to keep them? So health and safety is bigger, or is larger than PPE, which is your mask. It is about the systems that you put in place to be able to proactively mitigate the risk of health and safety, right from the construction of the building that is going to be used.
Yeah. So, Kosi, I think absolutely, as people are re-entering the workforce, it's a fundamental change and shift to how we think about these things now. And as you're saying, one needs to have a more holistic approach,
Yes.
and how this affects actually all aspects of your business. So there's another poll that we had put out to the viewers this afternoon. So the question was, does your business implement a health and safety system that is similar to what we're discussing now? And I'm glad to say that our audience, 73% has said yes, 9% has said no, and almost 20%, 18% have said the cost of such a system is limiting. So I think, here again, there's always a cost to be doing business. And
Yes.
is this but another cost now that, as entrepreneurs out there, we need to be factoring in to our projects, to our operations, to our operational costs as
Yes.
we get back into the workplace?
Yes, what I've done, by the way, I also think a lot about SMEs. I really believe in supporting the SMEs. I've been trying to speak to the financial agencies to say, when you give the loan, especially the manufacturing is even worse, because they are at the farming and the manufacturing, because it's also the health and safety of the products that they produce. So I was thinking, what about if these funding institutions, when they give the loan to the entrepreneur, they build that so that it becomes part of business support. I think that's
Yeah.
what we need to try and work towards, because there's no SME that can afford. I've been talking to SMEs myself. Some of them are really willing to implement health and safety, but they can't afford. It's a very, very expensive system, because it needs to be integrated not only within the organization, but you need to think about everybody, your third parties, the people that you work with. You need to think about them. What should you do with them for them to be able? It needs to cascade to all the levels of the value chain, and that becomes very, very costly for small and medium-sized companies. I think one of the things that we need to be able to try and see if it can be built while the financing institution is giving a loan to the small and medium-sized company, especially those that are high risk. I think it's very, very important.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a comment on the chat from Andrew, and Andrew is saying, if the cost of health and safety is limiting, consider the cost of a fatality. A well-designed health and safety system will pay for itself in terms of insurance, absenteeism, and business disruption. So I think
Thank you.
very much along the
I
lines
think Andrew is spot on. Yeah, he's spot on. He's spot on. I need Andrew on my team.
I just want you to just to read another extract from the article that you wrote on MoneyWeb. So you said, currently we have gone straight into action, leaving massive flaws in execution. Organizations are not only putting people at risk, but maybe leaving themselves legally liable.
Of
If it
course.
can be shown that they were negligent in stopping the virus on their premises. So here again,
Exactly. Exactly like I've said before, to say, you know what, with that tool, the social media tool that we have now, people are very, very aware now of their rights. That is the first thing. And you can just imagine, when now your organization is held liable, some of your partners won't even want to do business with you, because nobody wants to do business with somebody who's always in the media for wrong reasons. You understand? So it's very, very important. People are, so sometimes they even misuse the benefit of suing. They just sue sometimes when they themselves were also not, adhering to the procedures. But if you don't have any proof that you have put something in place, yes, legally you'll be held liable, and you lose a lot of money while trying to go through the court battles, trying to fight these legal things. And even some people will say, no, we don't want to do business with you. So I think it's very, very important that we actually put systems in place, so that if there's anything, we can prove. There's something called in law, the burden of proof. You can be able to prove that I have put everything in place to protect the employee. If really indeed he has been exposed, it was not in this workplace. But if you don't have that proof, yes, you'll be held liable. Even if the employee got sick somewhere, maybe at home or in the township, but you'll be held liable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when government released the regulations on the 29th of April in the Disaster Management Act, I think it was very clear around how one should proceed in aligning back to the new normal, and
Yes.
here again, taking an approach of caution to make sure that as far as possible you are able to prevent the spread of the virus through the various precautionary measures.
Yes.
What was your thoughts around that? And I think we mentioned it earlier when we said, it was a knee-jerk reaction, and people are going out and buying sanitizers and masks, and there's a booming market for masks and the various type of masks out there. So obviously there's an opportunistic side to it, but at the same time, I think we know as South Africa, we also heavily reliant on exports, on imports,
Yes.
rather, and therefore it does start to create opportunities for us locally. So what was your thoughts, and what was your reaction when you saw the regulations that were released by government on the 29th of April?
I was actually very happy, because I actually saw the opportunity to see, what it means. I've got a lot of work to do, because even though the regulations have been here. I mean, Health and Safety Act have been here from the time I was at school. But people don't know much about the health and safety, and they've never taken it seriously. And the reason why they've never taken health and safety serious is because they've always I think their perspective has always been health and safety is about compliance, health and safety is about productivity, is about the competitiveness of the business. I think their whole approach on how business and the public at large look at issues of health and safety has been wrong. But I'm so happy to be an executive leading the in the field of health and safety around that time, because when I see people running around and they believe that they've done the best, for me it was like I felt like laughing, to be honest with you, not because I'm undermining anybody, but for me it showed how much how naive people, like when I classify, when I implement the health and safety, I classify you. The first level is naive, when you just don't know. So I classify you as naive and you are ready. As far as military is concerned, it means I've got a lot of work to do with you. Understand? If you are just having a little bit of awareness and you haven't done anything, you are yellow, you are actually emergent. So it means, understand. So I saw a lot of naive people running around, and I said, this is a great opportunity for me. It means after Corona, I'll be able to stand up and implement my work. At this time, at least I'll have a ready and engaged audience. They'll be ready to listen because they are scared.
So, so Kosi, just another question that's come through on the chat by Vera. So Vera says, it is sometimes difficult to discuss this with clients as it is an additional spend for them. How do we best advise clients, and is it our responsibility as consultants to do so if we observe a potential risk? What's your thoughts on that?
I know it myself, because you don't know how frustrated I've been in trying to make people understand. You understand? I'm very convincing, but I had a hard time trying to, but I was waiting for this moment. So I just want to tell my colleagues out there that after this, she doesn't or doesn't have to work very hard. They are ready to engage because they are so worried. They are going to go back to all these clients that have been giving you problems. Now they are ready to, you don't have to, you just have to assist them to implement health and safety, because they are not going to respond. Mind you, I said we don't have to go back to wherever, we don't have any back to go back to. Now we have to go forward from where we are and create a new culture and a new vision. Now they are ready. She must just go back to whoever that has been giving her problems. They are ready to listen now. They've got a serious problem.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kosi. So, for a small business who has probably not been operating during this lockdown period, they haven't been classified as an essential service business, and hopefully now with the anticipated lowering of the restrictions at the end of the month, they are starting to get geared to get back into their working environment, to get back to doing projects or to pick up from where they left off pre-COVID. Where should they start? What should they start doing? How do they get themselves prepared to go back, knowing that, this is now the new normal, and it's how I need to be thinking about my business going forward. But, what is the starting point for someone who is seemingly overwhelmed, certainly by the amount of information out there around this and the regulations that have been released? Where does one start?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. I think it's very, very important. It's very easy for leadership to go to the basement when they thinking about 12 things that needs to be done, and they don't know where to start. But I always say start with the 3 top things that you need to do to be able to stabilize your organization. Just top 3 that even if you don't do anything, if you do these top 3, you'll be able to slowly work towards. Mind you, we're building from where we are until a new vision has emerged. But if every day you think about the 3 things that you need to do to be able to put health and safety, like to a position where you want it to be, is to start by saying, what should I do first? You need information. You need to be able to put a system to track. So even if people think about about in system, they think you need to go and buy an ICT system. No, putting a book that says I've got so many employees, you understand, as they enter there, you screen them and you record their temperature. That's a system. That's a tracking and monitoring system. It's not a big thing, but at least it will tell you out of the 40 employees that I have, none of them seems to be showing a signs of whatever, and actually addressing them. Information management system, addressing your employees, creating awareness, and making reinforce the importance of keeping themselves safe, even if in the workplace and also outside of the workplace. So that communication, nobody is as important as the communication department these days. Two departments are very important. In fact, three. It is the communications department, it is the HR department, because that's where people go to when they're not feeling well. And it's a compliance, risk, and governance department if you've got that department. And if you're a small entrepreneur, you are one department, one person is responsible for all that.
Yes.
So make sure that you communicate with your employees. Make sure that you try and find out how they feel. It's very, very important, because you get to notice what their fears are. You understand? Is to also to start and assess your business to see how is my business doing. Out of the 5 clients that I have, how many do I still have? Because that will tell you whether your business is still going to continue or not. And that slowly, as you walk yourself towards that, slowly we are going to feel confident that you've got everything stabilized. Take those baby steps. Identify three things that you need to be able to start with and work towards that. Understand? And where you don't know, I find leadership trying to pretend as if they know everything. Don't pretend as if you know everything. Address if employees are asking you something that you don't know. Say, on this one, I'm still working on it. I do not know, but I'm going to find out, and I'm going to come back on such and such a day with an answer. Don't try. And shared leadership is very important around this time. Very few leaders have been taught how to lead during a crisis, but we need to develop those skills of leading during a crisis. Don't pretend to be a marco knowing everything. Bring your employees around. Ask from them some of the things that you are not sure. It's very important. Shared leadership is very important around this time. And even you as a leader, you need to take care of yourself. You need to be well for you to be able to absorb so much pressure from everybody. Everybody needs answers from you. You need to be strong for them.
Okay, so Kosi, can we just go through those top 3 aspects? I know you mentioned a number of them. So number 1 is you want to implement almost a recording system.
Yes.
As soon as you go back, so to have a book or to have some sort of reference where you are recording the temperatures of your staff, you are ensuring whether they are feeling well and are not showing any symptoms.
Yes.
So that's number 1. The second aspect you spoke about was creating or getting access to information. And
Yes.
in terms of that information, I guess you're referring to the legislation. You're referring to
Yes.
To what other practical resources can people refer to? So is the legislation, in your view, the primary resource?
They can also contact people like us, like if maybe a person saying, okay, medium term to long term, now I need to implement the system. You need to find the expert there, because it's not something that we can discuss over the phone, how to implement health and safety system. For those people who does have a system, it's a lot of work. So it's just to find people who are experts in the field of health and safety. They can also support you. It's very, very important. But I also think that as I must applaud you guys for this platform, because peer to peer also, you'll find that what you don't know, your peers, they have implemented it and they know. They need to be able, SMEs needs to be able to work together, because what you don't know, you'll find that your colleagues, the other colleagues know about it. So you need to be able to support each other also as business. You understand? I think that is important. But
Hi, Kosi. Seems like we may have lost Kosi. We're just going to try on the back end to see whether we can get her back to us. So I think some some clear guidance for us, for many of us, as we're heading back into the workplace. Let's make sure that we are building the information system around, tracking how our staff are feeling and whether they're displaying any signs of not being well. Secondly, to ensure that we are trying to consult the right type of experts out there and just get ourselves more educated around the topic through the legislation, through engaging with peers, through engaging some of the experts that we've been dealing with around health and safety. And then the third aspect, I think, speaking about the communication aspect, always to make sure that we are engaging with our staff, as well as creating awareness in the workplace, in the office, on project sites, and just making sure that people are constantly aware that this is a serious pandemic, and let's not let our guard down during these times. I think as Kosi rightfully said, that in building a health and safety system, one needs to make sure that there is a clear plan in place. You are reviewing some of those risks in our new context as we head back, and I think just make sure that we are always aware of what is happening around us. So it looks like we are not getting Kosi back. I know there were two questions from Rafilwe. So Rafilwe, hopefully we've answered your question in terms of the, you spoke about the COVID sort of protocol system. So hopefully we've given you some tips on that. And then Mbu Yazwe had a specific question, which we will try to get Kosi's input on and then get back to you if you don't mind. So if you can please leave your email address in the chat box. So yes, hopefully that was useful and constructive for you this afternoon. I actually just wanted to end off the discussion with a quote from the very same article that we've been speaking about all along from Kosi, that appeared on MoneyWeb at the end of March. So it was a quote from Martin Luther King, and he was speaking about this particular issue at a different time, but I think it resonates with the current situation that we're going through. So he said, "We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. There is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action." So I think on that note, I would really like to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon. I hope the discussion has been beneficial. And please do follow us on the various social media platforms. Do go to www.ettp.co.za and sign up to our newsletter and be in the know around future conversations that are coming up. You'll see on your screen in front of you, we're continuing with our In Conversation series tomorrow and next week, Monday. So tomorrow, we're speaking to Lincoln Mohale, who is the co-founder and director of Guarding Technology and Security Services. So my colleague Azola will be speaking to him, as well as to Vongani next week, Monday, who is the co-founder and director of Mahudu and Associates. So please do join us, and please stay connected to entrepreneurship to the point, as we hope to inform, equip, and inspire all of you during this very difficult time. So I'm Desigan Chetty, and thanks again for joining us today.